Okay, welcome to this week's hand lettering tutorial. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. I'm going to be showing you a few different writing tools that you could do or that you could use and some different ways that you could practice hand lettering. I know we've been mainly focusing on doing modern faux calligraphy, but there are other things that you can do to help differentiate your hand lettering. So I will review our rules really quick. So when we do get into the faux calligraphy portion, you will remember what we are supposed to be focusing on. We are always going to be having downstrokes, and that's what creates that hand lettered look. When you put heavy pressure on your marker when it goes down, it's going to create that thicker stroke. And then on your upstrokes, you're going to have that thin or light pressure. You're going to connect your letters. And when you are working on connecting your letters or forming your letters, you want to think about that as you're making them. So when you go around with your letter, you want to make sure that you have a tail on the end so that you're able to connect it to something else. And then always have fun. So just try some different things out and see what you like best, and see if you can develop your own form of hand lettering. So to start, I'm going to be focusing on just using my favorite tool, which is just the Crayola Broadline Marker. And for this one, I'm going to be using the traditional calligraphy method where I am putting heavier pressure on my downward strokes. I'm not going to go back and fill in the downstrokes. So I'm just going to be writing the marker that I'm using as I'm doing the calligraphy. So that's a way that you could practice too. Just find random objects and write the word, or random phrases and practice writing it. You don't have to think of something really creative. So I'm going to apply that heavy pressure on those downward strokes. And light pressure on the upward strokes. And Crayola Broadline markers are a nice tool to practice with because they have a really flexible tip. So when you put more pressure, heavier pressure down, it's going to create that thicker line and give you that fun hand lettered effect. So again, this is the Crayola Broadline marker. The next marker I'm going to show you is another Crayola, and this one is a Crayola fine tip marker. So the difference between the broad line and the fine line is most of the time, mine is a little worn out, so it is kind of flexible, but most of the time these are not flexible tips. So it's going to be very challenging to get this thicker downstroke without messing up your marker. So I'm going to write this one in cursive, and I'm going to show you what you could do with a fine tip marker. So you can go ahead and write out your word, and then you can go back and draw in where you would put those downstrokes. A lot of times I will do this on all of the packages that I ship out. So if you have ever received a sign or wooden decor piece from us, your name was probably hand lettered just like this on the package. So this is a Crayola fine line marker. If you are just tuning in, I am just going to be showing you some different writing tools this week and some different ways that you could practice your hand lettering. There's not a specific word or anything that we're practicing today. So this is the broadline and fine line marker. The next marker, which I haven't talked about, which I'm surprised on all these tutorials, is another Crayola marker, and it is actually the Chiseltips marker. And what's cool about this is it also has a flexible tip, just like the broadline markers do, so you can create that thicker downward stroke. I'm going to do just traditional print with this marker, but I'm going to apply that heavier pressure on the down strokes and the light pressure on the way up. And I see that someone is having their, this says Crayola Markers. I was thinking that they were having their crayons on their way, because I know that a couple of people were trying to hand letter with crayons, and it is possible, but it is going to be harder. I actually looked for crayons, but I think they are all left in my classroom, so I didn't have any at home. So again, these are the Chiseltip markers. Then another favorite of mine is a Bic Mark-It. Now this is a permanent marker. So if you are writing in permanent markers, make sure you have multiple papers underneath the one you're practicing or something else down on your surface, because it is going to bleed through and it will get on your countertop, it will get on your table. I use paint markers a lot, and those soak through and they are right on our table and I can't get it off now. So just a little hint, definitely have more paper down underneath. So again, this is the Bic Mark-It. And then this is a fine point permanent marker. I really like this marker because it really glides across the paper. So for this one, because it doesn't have a flexible tip and it's not going to create a thicker downstroke, I'm going to just box it in like I did with that fine tip marker. And then I'm going to go back and I am going to add in some horizontal dashes. So this is just another element that you could add to your lettering to change it up and just to add a different effect. Because I know sometimes if you're practicing every day, like you should be, it can get kind of boring after a while. So you want to change it up and challenge yourself. If I was doing this for a customer, I would definitely take my time on these. But you can go quick if you're just practicing. And then, as you know, I always cross my T's or dot my I's after I've done everything. And I'm going to think about when I cross my T, I kind of like this effect I'm having on the K right here. So I'm just going to add that same little loopy effect, and then I'm going to dot right underneath there. So this is the Bic Mark-It Fine Point pen. So these are the 3 or 4 that we've practiced. I've really been working on putting that heavy pressure down on my downstroke so I don't have to go back, and I'm getting much better at it. So those are 4 markers. Another set of markers that a lot of you probably have are Sharpies. And so I have a collection of Sharpies. These colors don't really go together, but I have a king size Sharpie, I have a fine point Sharpie, and then an ultra fine Sharpie. And so if you ever have the king size Sharpie, you've probably written like big poster boards or like for like yard sales and things like that. These are difficult to use. They're hard to hold because they're a much fatter pencil. It's hard to get a good grip on it. And they do have a chisel tip. Some of them do have a rounded point. I would suggest having a rounded point marker if you're trying to do anything fancy, but these are doable. So I'm just going to write, oh, and it's really squeaky. Hopefully I don't run out of room. So when I am writing in just traditional print, a way that you can change it up is you can vary where you put your crossbars. So I could have put this crossbar up there, I could have put this one lower or even higher, or like this E, I could put all the way up there. And it does change your writing. So if you saw here, this actually got a little bit smaller. So if I'm using a fat marker that is really difficult to control, I might want to write in some guidelines to help me know where I need to keep my marker, because this is a more difficult one to use. But you can go back in, if you're making those big poster boards, you can go back in and create a much thicker word, and it's going to be able to be seen from much further away. So I'm sure all of you have made a poster board sometime in your life. I remember back when I was in school, I would make it for like the science fair, or we would have to do like mock elections and, like Natasha running for president or something. So those were my favorite things to do in group projects or projects in school, was to create the poster board. So this is the king size Sharpie. And then if you wanted to have the fine point Sharpie, it doesn't have that flexible end. Some things that you can do, as we worked on these last week, but you can go through and you can create those drop shadows that are a little bit offset. So you would go in and you would think about where your sunlight is coming from. So if I had the sun coming from this side, the shadow is going to be casted on this side. You can also have the sun coming from this side. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that all of your shadows are in line with where your sunlight's coming from. So if I had the sun over here, this would create the shadow. And this is called an offset shadow line because it is not touching the other marker that we've used. If you wanted to create a shadow line that is connected, I would suggest not using two dark colors like I've chosen here, because it's going to be hard to see what you have done. Like that actually connected, and it's really hard to see because they're both dark colors, and it doesn't really show the effect that you're trying to get at. So if you are trying to add in these shadow lines, I would suggest spacing your letters out more. I tried to do that, but I was afraid I was going to run out of room, because you are going to have to add in that extra space. So I'm going to say there and there. And then another Sharpie you could have is the ultra fine tip. So this is a super fine tip marker. You are not going to be able to do fancy hand lettering with this. You can definitely go in and do some cursive writing with it, or this is great for going in and adding in those little words or just little phrases inside of your big hand lettered piece. So the markers we used for this were the king size marker, the fine point marker, and the ultra fine point marker. Okay. Someone says they need inspiration for their chalkboard. Oh, I should show you the chalkboard markers that I have. They are awesome. I'm going to have my husband go get them right now. Hey, can you go get that box of markers? My friend got me the coolest set of chalkboard markers, and I used them the last time, they're in that drawer, the last time I hand lettered our chalkboard, and they're so fun. That, and then there's a big box in there. All right, the next marker, while he's getting those, that I'm going to show you is going to be two permanent markers. And these are all chisel-tipped markers. So this one is a Sharpie, but it's a chisel tip. So chisel tip just means that it's slanted, and it's going to be a little bit fatter. I don't know if you can kind of see that. And so you have to think about, when you're holding this marker, how it's going to apply the pressure. So it is going to create a thick line, but when I am lettering with my chisel tip markers, I like to turn it so that the point is actually down. And then I always hold my markers at an angle instead of upright like this, because it's going to be difficult to letter. And something else that I think I've forgotten to mention is when I am hand lettering in cursive, I want to make sure that I'm actually moving my whole arm and not just moving my wrist to write. Okay, so here is what I'm going to do with our chisel tip markers. Again, I'm going to make sure on my chisel tip that I've turned the point down. And then I'm going to watch my arm move and not just my wrist as I'm writing. Okay, so you can go back and you can add in those downstrokes. This is an easy marker to do that with. It's much easier than the king size marker because I'm able to hold on to this a lot better than that fat king size marker that doesn't really allow you to have a lot of control. Okay, so something fun that you could do to add to your designs is you can put bubbles around it. So you can kind of bubble out your whole word. So I'm going to go around, and I'm not really like going all the way up. I'm just kind of outlining it. And then I'm going to show you what else you can do to add some flair to this style. All right, so you could just leave it like that. Or if you wanted to, you could go in and again, you can create shadow lines and you can put the shadow line, the drop lines that are connected. So for this, I'm gonna pretend that my sun is on this side. So my shadow is going to be casted over here. So you could make, and I'm turning now my chisel tip marker, this is what this is nice for. I'm turning it flat and I am holding it still at a slant, but more upright so that it creates a flat line. And I'm going to just put in a shadow like that. This is going to help create really straight lines. So if you are new to shadowing, so for this one, I should have used my tip a little bit more on the marker because now it has a shadow there, but it's okay. So I'm just putting those shadow lines. But if what I was saying is you are new to shadow lines, I would suggest going through with a pencil first to try to figure out where those lines are supposed to be. Okay, so that's just another effect that you could do. And this is a chisel tip marker. All right, so now I've said that I was gonna go in and show you. I do have a few more pens to show you, but I said I would show you those chalk markers. So my friend, well, actually first, hang on. I normally use these Bistro chalk markers. I have them and they are just the rounded tip. Mine's kind of flat because I've pushed on it a lot, but these Bistro chalk markers, I just get them at Joann's or you can get them online. And I have all different colors. These ones are much thinner point. And then, as you saw, this one is a thicker point. These are great. I have used these markers and the chalkboard, I think I've just gotten lucky with my chalkboard because a lot of my friends have said when they use chalk markers on their chalkboard, when they go to erase it, it doesn't erase. I picked up my chalkboard at Marshall's or Home Goods like 6 years ago. And when I design something, I'll leave it on for like 5 to 6 months. I don't change it often. And the marker just comes right off. So either I just got lucky with these particular markers, or my chalkboard is just amazing. And I think the chalkboard was like $20. But the markers that my friend got me are these Blammy, I think, chalk markers. And they come in a set of 4, and they have the 3mm, 6mm, 10mm, and 16mm. But as you can see, they have reversible tips. So when you open it up, it looks like this. So I have the rounded tip on there. You can pull out the tip, and the other side is a chisel tip, and you can flip it around and use the chisel tip. So that's really cool. And I have all the different sizes. So I have like this super fat marker. Then I have this other one that's a little bit larger. And then the next size, and then this smaller size. This is the size that probably most people use. I like to use this one if I am creating like an effect like this on my chalkboard. But I think she just got these on Amazon, but they're awesome. And I tested it out, and they do erase on my chalkboard too. So if they don't erase on yours, I'm sorry. All right. The next tool I'm going to show you is a brush pen. So these are kind of dried out, so I'm going to try my best to show you what they can do. But if you are seeing a lot of calligraphers use a brush pen that looks like this, has a very flexible tip, and it allows you, when you go on those push down for the heavy pressure on the downstrokes, it creates the thicker line. So it automatically is going to create that thicker line. Or on the upstroke, you just have less pressure. This, I have this brand. These markers are kind of old, and when I first started using them, I didn't know what I was doing. But I will say, I don't particularly like these. But I don't know if it is because when I first started using them, I kind of messed up the tips, and now they just don't work well for me. But I'll show you what they can do. A good brand of these would be Tombow. I know that those are a really good brand, and these are dual tip markers. So this side is a brush tip, and this other side is a fine tip. But what I do like about the brush tip markers is, again, you can provide or push that heavy pressure down, and then as you go up, kind of create that brush effect. But something that's really cool, and again, these markers are kind of dried out, so it doesn't work very well. But you can create those really flowy, like lettering. I don't even know what I'm doing right now, but lettering effect with these brush markers. And if this one wasn't so dried out, what it would create is this nice, thick downstroke. These are much harder to use, but like I had said, I have not tried out many different brands, and I'm not saying that the most expensive one is the best one. I think you just have to find what works for you, but I think these brush ones are fun, just to kind of create those like swirly lines and just add something different. So this is what a brush pen could do. All right, so see, this is why you need to have more paper down. That could be on my brand new countertops. So have more paper down. You can also letter just with a pencil. So we are contractors here, you know, and we've got these wood pencils. So I'm not sure if many of you have these thick wood pencils, but they actually are really nice for lettering. So I could write a nice cursive word with this thick pencil. And then if you had a mechanical pencil, which has that really thin point, thin lead, you can go back in, oh, it broke. You can go back in and create, again, those outlines. And before, if you remembered, we've kept them plain, and we've also added in those horizontal lines, but you could go back and you can add in dots You could create like a zigzag. Again, you could do the lines. You could create this. I wrote this kind of small, but like you could create like little curly Q thing there. You could color it in. You can create like thin lines here, and then as it goes up, get them thicker. But pencils work great. And they're always around. Well, actually, I think we have more markers than we have pencils in our house, but you can always practice with these. And then the last one is just a pen. So with a pen, it's just gonna create a thin line, but you can practice writing and really figuring out how you wanna style your letters. So as time has gone on, my alphabet for hand lettering has really changed, and I have practiced it using just a pen. So if I was to write like the alphabet, what I like about using the pen is it doesn't take up a lot of room. And so it's good to practice so that I'm not wasting tons and tons and tons of paper using different tools. But these are the tools that I have used today. I encourage you to try a new tool. If you go out and you letter your chalkboard, show me, tag me. That is a great place to practice because you can just erase it and write it again and erase. And if you do use your chalkboard and you tried out these markers, let me know. This is obviously not sponsored, but I would like to see what you can create and if you like these markers too. So thanks so much, and remember that this video will be on YouTube tomorrow, so you can go back and check out the different writing tools that we used today. Bye.